Good morning and welcome back to the VIP seat. It is September 30th. Your co-hosts here as usual, Jessie, Naor, and Preston, Holland. Lots of stories to cover today, from Mexican regulatory changes to new brokerages. It's going to be a good show today.
Yeah, there has been some activity. I mean, we're in that lull period where everybody's kind of holding all of the good news for MBAA base. Although I think that is actually, I don't know, what I've seen over the last couple of years is there's not as much like holding in information until you get to NBAA. So I don't know, it's an exciting time. It's a good time for being in private aviation, business aviation. We are your top news source for the top 5 stories every single week. In business aviation, it keeps you up to date at the water cooler and before you walk in the door. So with that, we're going to jump to the first story, where Flexjet has made a massive 300 aircraft bet on a revolutionary bullet-shaped jet. So Flexjet just dropped one of the biggest aircraft orders in private aviation history, 300 Otto Aviation Phantom 3500s, which I know for listeners, if you're anything like me, you read that and you're like, that is a weird combo of Phenom and 3500, Challenger 3500. I was like, that can't be on accident. But it's not your typical aircraft order, because this is a clean sheet design led by teams from Textron and Gulfstream and some entrepreneurs who have kind of created this, and it has no windows. So it's pretty crazy. Jessie, what do you think?
Yeah, so I don't know. I always take these announcements with a grain of salt. I was just thinking back to the Ariane order that they did back in 2015, and then that company went out of business. That's the problem with some of these, is like, okay, yeah, we made this big order, but like how much cash actually had to change hands? Probably not a lot. This is probably more like a marketing thing for Otto, but who knows? Maybe. But I don't know. I don't know if it's bullet shaped or like blimp shaped with an engine on it. It's kind of a funky plane.
Yeah, it kind of looks like, if you've ever looked at like that, is it Eve Air Mobility? No, it's the one out of the Northeast that it's like the 15 passenger hydrogen aircraft, or 10 passenger hydrogen aircraft. It kind of looks like that. And it looks slick, don't get me wrong. And for those people who are watching on YouTube, we're gonna just really quick pull up a picture of this thing, because it's honestly, it's pretty wild looking. So if you're not watching on YouTube, this is now your excuse to go over to YouTube and check out the show. But the interior is crazy because the walls are all super high definition screens. And so but then it uses some camera technology to give you a live look into the outside. So 6'5". So for those tall people, that doesn't matter to me, to be honest. But for those people who are tall, this is something that is exciting. And there it is. Jessie, hot or not?
It's not, and I'm sorry, ramp presence does matter. Performance specs and everything else matter. It's just, it looks weird. It just looks weird. That's all I can.
Yeah, it is peculiar. So this is from Private Jet Car Comparisons, where Doug Golan did a really good job breaking down what this means. I think one of the, I mean, look, Flexjet is always about kind of breaking the mold and creating new technology and being innovative. So this is a signal for that. But I think I'm with you. I'm not sure, like, it's a signal, but it's also fractional. Like here's my opinion, is it's fractional. So you have to have, after this announcement, you really need a lot of people to go, hey, yeah, for sure, I'm in for a 16th or an 8th or a half of that. The one thing that I think is crazy, and I don't know exactly how true these numbers are, but the price point for a 10 passenger super mid is like pretty attractive. $19.5 million per aircraft. Now, obviously Flexjet gets buying power, and when they order 300 aircraft, you get a discount. But I think that, if that price point holds true at 19.5, like, it's going to be cheaper than a Challenger 3500. And if the range is similar, like, who really cares how weird and funny looking it is on the outside? Also, here's another thing that looks really silly on the outside, is the Cybertruck. And people buy those all the time. So, like, yeah. I'm not sure 100%. There's a class of people who really want kind of weird and exotic.
Yeah, I guess so. I don't know. I just see this as like super low risk for both parties. I don't know how much. Does it say how much capital? Did they even publish like how much they had to put down for these orders, or no?
They didn't. Actually, there was not a whole lot of information that I found. If you like wanted to get really nitty gritty, it didn't even say if it was a firm order. Like it was just kind of a.
Well, and 300 is like an absurd number for an aircraft that isn't even in production. Like, what are we? Sorry, I don't mean to be like such a negative Nelly, but I'm just like, what?
Well, it's set to take flight in 27, so it's 25. Call it almost 26 now. With the current track record of clean sheet designs, you're probably looking at the first flight in 29 realistically. So enter into service sometime in the 2030s. And you know what? Odyssey Space Race, right? Like that kind of looks like it looks like an aircraft that would be in the future. And so it's going to be in the future. So that's kind of cool, right?
Well, I do love the concept of like the, screens inside. So you have this outdoor picture and it's carbon fiber design, which is always kind of interesting and different. And I really don't know why we haven't used it more in aviation. Maybe an engineer can come on here and educate us. That would be great. So yeah, I don't know. I guess good to dream, good to come up with new concepts and ideas, and Flexjet is supporting them in some way. So that's cool about it, but we'll have to wait and see how this actually works out.
I think the other thing that was interesting is how fuel efficient it is. So it's all carbon fiber composites, which is crazy. I mean, that's like they make aerobatic aircraft out of all carbon fiber. But it's going to cut fuel burn by over 60%. So if you're coming in at a cheaper operating cost, like by 60% on fuel, I don't know how much maintenance is going to be. I mean, I would imagine very expensive because it's carbon fiber, but and then your get-in price is cheap. It kind of seems like the perfect fractional aircraft. I mean, that is like by definition why I think it makes sense for these people. Are people going to buy whole ones of these? I mean, I'm sure there will be some, but I don't know if it's going to be an everyday driver for most.
If it's cheap enough per hour, I mean, it can. I mean, if fuel is your biggest cost beyond labor. So honestly, if it reduces it that much, it could be viable. And for a certain group of people that don't care about what the outside of the airplane looks like, they just want the functionality of getting from A to Z for a cheaper price. Sure, makes sense.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Well, this was madness, and it's going to lead us into the Mile High Madness section of the show, which is where Jessie and I scour the internet for crazy things in business and private aviation, sometimes commercial aviation, from social media. And Jessie texted me today and said that hers is fantastic. So Jessie, I'm going to let you go first.
It's amazing. So actually, this is a few weeks old. Somehow I missed this, but I think it's still very worthy of being on here. All right, this is from Flight S. And if you guys haven't followed her, she's a corporate flight attendant who...
Andrea, everybody wants this.
She said, if you're ever feeling ridiculous at work...
Oh, don't be ridiculous, Andrea.
Just remember that I served an African gray parrot with a trust fund, mashed potatoes, and grapes on Christoph China on a white tablecloth on a private jet. Pretty amazing.
I mean, you cannot hide money. That is for sure. So, yeah, that's pretty crazy. There are levels, right? There's like jokes where it's like, if I win the lottery, like you will know. For me, this will not be something for me. But this for somebody, it's like when I hit the lottery, like there will be signs.
Well, she was also talking about how a lot of animals have these trust funds. Gunter, the German Shepherd, has like a $400 million trust fund set aside for him. So he's probably being flown around privately as well, if I had to guess. Yeah.
I mean, if like what? Even in dog years, that's like $10 million a year. That's crazy. That's insane. That's got to be tax fraud, right? Like that's definitely tax fraud. Like the dog passes away and then it gets inherited by the next dog or something like that. And then they're bringing their human passengers on the private jet. It's like, oh, I didn't pay for it. My dog did.
This is my servant, he takes care of me.
Yeah, exactly. Well, mine is from X, and there's an account, it's a parody account called Chase Passive Income, where he makes all these ridiculous jokes about ways in which he makes passive income money, right? Like, and he comments on a lot of pop culture things. But this one I thought was hilarious. Guess who owns the private jet studio that these guys rented for $100 an hour? But I want to point out how ridiculous, like, look, these are legitimate couches, like plush couches. And this guy's on a stool. I'm like, yeah. You don't even have to squint very hard to know that this is not a private jet. But, I had someone reach out to me and they were like, yeah, I'm thinking about starting this studio for Instagram influencers to come use and pretend like they're on a private jet. I'm going to make so much money. And I'm like, honestly, I mean, at $100 an hour, you're probably looking at a couple $1,000 worth of furniture, like you're going to make your money back pretty quick. So
Sure.
and everybody likes to look like they're on private jets. I tell you what is not in this picture though, Jessie. I just want to ask you, what is not in this studio? The
So many
VIP
things.
seat. The VIP seat is not in this photo. And also these seats do not swivel. Like
Well, it's just
nothing
couches.
about everything about this is like wrong. So yeah. So if you're gonna do an interior, make sure that you make it look at least kind of legit.
It's so common though. I mean, even like when you're watching a movie, especially like, a B-roll movie or something, like you can always tell the airplane's not the airplane. It's some sort of studio. But this is becoming like a real cottage industry. I saw something the other day. This girl is like setting up a studio for influencers and teaching them how to like be an influencer. And she has all these different rooms they can take pictures in and things. And what a world we're living in today. Although I guess we are technically doing that as well. So I can't really judge.
I know. I was at an event. Over the weekend and someone was like, oh, look, it's Preston the influencer. I was like, that is offensive. Like I am just a dude who happens to host a podcast once a week with my friend Jessie. So we are not influencers. We just like to have a good time. So that is crazy. Speaking of having a good time, if you're flying to Mexico, you are about to not be having a good time.
Yeah. So this came from, I think it was your X account, but we had a listener chime in and say, hey, why aren't actually the comment was something like, oh, why don't you freaking cover this story because it's outrageous. So Mexico, once again, is causing problems. If you're an operator, this is not new to you. It seems like Mexico decides at the last minute to make all sorts of crazy changes to the rules and mess up everyone's schedules, which is what's happening now. They're apparently not accepting single flight permits. So for those who aren't familiar, to go to Mexico, you have to have a permit from the Civil Aviation Authority there. And they can be really hard to get in the first place. But now they're saying, we're not taking single permits at all. You have to have a blanket ferry permit, which takes months, if not years, to get sometimes, I've heard in certain cases. If you're planning a charter to Mexico, or if you're a broker that's working on a trip to Mexico, you need to get up to date on this really fast.
Yeah, so it was Jonathan Martin, who is at Flybird Aviation, who sent me this lead on this story. And to be honest, I had no idea that this was something. It's like 15 grand, and that's if you can get it. And basically his argument is that this basically eliminated any NREG'd operator that doesn't have a blanket permit. So it's really helping out the big guys and really penalizing all of the smaller operators that fly in and out of Mexico. Or it's going to force a lot of these brokers to start having to use X-regged aircraft. And as we all know, not the same as flying on an N-regged aircraft. There are some corporate policies that say you have to be on N-reg, has to be 5 years and newer. There's insurance policies, key man risk policies that have kind of, these are the only aircraft that you can actually fly on type stuff. This is not great. I would say that if the FAA is not looking into what do you do? I mean, I don't know. I actually I don't know how we
There's nothing
you can't really do retaliatory, right?
No.
But yeah, so basically his argument was basically you're booking a fly exclusive type operator that has, a big enough team that they have these blanket, or you're going to have to pull an XA tail in from wherever and you're going to have to pay repo fees. So I don't know. It's almost like a tax on the wealthy flying to Cabo. Like that's kind of what it feels like.
Yeah, and that's kind of what they do. I think Mexico has a tendency to be very protective of its own operations. And this is, we get into cabotage and all the other international operations rules. Countries like to look out for their own businesses. We do the same thing in the US. But Mexico has a tendency, I feel like, and this is not the first time. I remember as an operator, they would make some blanket change that takes effect in 2 weeks when you're like, wait, I already have charters booked, 2 to 3 months out from now. But even, the blanket permit, I can't remember the exact numbers, but when I was an operator, I want to say it was around $1,500 to go to Mexico to get that permit in the first place. Yeah, and if it's $15,000 now for the blanket permit, that's unbelievable. You'd have to do 15 trips a year or more to justify kind of that cost, 10 trips or more a year to justify that cost. But yeah, if you're not a big operator that's doing tons of trips to Mexico, you're not going to invest in that permit in the first place and just skip it altogether, unfortunately.
Yeah, and it's non-scheduled operations, so it was always hard to fly in, or it's for the last 2 years. Been kind of hard to fly in under Part 91, and it kind of was causing aircraft owners to fly in via charter. And now it's 10 business days and more paperwork and all this kind of stuff. So it's like for the smaller operators, they're going to have a lot of forward looking. And then there's another, and this is something that I don't understand is like insurance. There's like some insurance requirements. So like insurance must list the precise make, model, serial, and registration. And if it's mismatched, like they can just ground you. Yeah. No typos. So, I mean,
Mexico is no joke. Yeah.
Yeah, no joke. And it's like, yeah, well, Mexico, there is the cartel air. So like, why don't you maybe focus on those guys? But,
I will tell you too, just, there's the paperwork that you fill out. There's the things that they tell you you're supposed to do as a charter operator. But even if you get there as a charter operator, we would always send crews with a few $1,000s and just, extra fee money that would be charged. But Mexico, you need support down there. And if you're not someone who goes down there frequently and you're not someone that charters there frequently, just do your research, talk to trip people that we've talked about before. It's a crazy place.
Yeah, maybe the M&A news was a big tailwind for flying in and out of Mexico. They knew this was coming.
Right. All right. Well, speaking of legal operations, it seems like the FAA has gotten wind of the text groups that we were talking about, the WhatsApp groups that we were talking about. It feels like just a month or two ago. But the FAA is trying to step up enforcements against any operators that are running flights that have involved text groups. But it's a really gray area, and I'm not really sure how they're going to enforce this in particular, especially if it's Part 91 aircraft or something that they don't know about.
Yeah, so basically it all kind of started with this. It was like a Patreon post, and that's kind of like taken a little bit of like, it's in a couple of forums, it's on Reddit, there's like a couple of places where basically it's saying that like the FAA is starting to crack down on this. And what it seems like is the FAA, that the story did actually, shake some cages, and it seems that they are making some, there's not a lot of, never really come out publicly and said like, here's exactly what we are doing, but there's a lot of noise happening around this issue. We were one of them, right? We had a big, long episode talking about this, a big rant. So if you haven't gone back and listened, we'll be sure to link that in the newsletters, link that episode in the newsletter so you can go back and listen to it. But yeah, I think that, once again, it kind of echoes the point that we had from before that, the FAA needs to actually think about something that's, what are you doing here?
Yeah. And this is, look, illegal charter has been a problem for years and years now. There is a special emphasis investigation team set up at the FAA, the SCIT, or I don't know how they pronounce it. But, they've been trying to crack down on some of this. And I've heard kind of off the record from a lot of people that, yes, we start to go after these cases, but then it takes years and years and years to get through the process. And then even at the end of the process, they're not really having any success in getting serious fines or serious ways of keeping people from doing this. And this is just one of the problems, the enforcement problems the FAA has, is it takes years to execute on them. It's very hard to locate these cases, especially in this case. Like, who do you blame? Do you blame the 135 operator, or do you blame the passengers who were selling the seats to each other? I have a great suggestion that people probably will hate, but I think they should outsource the enforcement. I don't know how many cases there are of third parties enforcing fines and that sort of thing, but it seems like the FAA just doesn't have the bandwidth, time, and resources to be able to execute on this. But something needs to change because we can't keep having this in the industry. It's very unsafe.
Yeah. Well, speaking of the FAA not having any resources, they are about to not have any time to do much of anything, because it appears that the FAA is moving, going to the DOT. So Jessie, you've got this one.
Yeah. So this one, this is interesting. So look, some of this, I'm just reading between the lines of what's happening. But Sean Duffy, has indicated, I think, a lot more. Seems like he's really taking the reins at DOT and really wants FAA to start doing some of the things that they said that they should be doing and working on programs they should be working on. And I think part of that is moving them from their current headquarters into the DOT headquarters, which is much newer, much nicer. I don't know how many listeners have actually been to FAA headquarters, but I can tell you that place is old. Very old, very depressing and dark. And I think they even had lead contamination in the water for a while. So you can't even drink the water in the building. It's kind of a mess.
Yeah, that is a mess. There are 44,000 employees, which is the largest of the DOT with a total of 52,000. Basically, it's consolidating all of the DOT into one space. Now, the DOT building was built in 2007. And the current Orville and Wilbur Wright building, which is on the mall, was built in They moved in 1963, so who knows when it was actually built. And with Trump's like forcing into office, I think that the FAA has to do something. Here's an interesting stat.
Yeah.
So for those people who have not read it yet, we will link it in the newsletter, but the Air Current did a beautiful deep dive on this topic and kind of went into like how we got here. And that's what the Air Current is known for doing. So if you want really deep dives into aviation, I highly recommend reading them. But they broke it down and basically said there's 3 options that the FAA has, and they cost a wildly different amount of money to do so. Kind of the small, medium, large. The small plan is $43.3 million, but still can't accommodate 1,000 employees. And that basically says leave the DOT East building exactly how it is and move the FAA people in. The medium-sized plan, which still can't accommodate 500 of the potential employees, is $85.3 million. So like double, but still, basically like pick the places that you want to reno and don't do the other ones. But what everybody wants to do apparently is $258 million, which demos and renovates every floor and redoes the entire building to be exactly what the FAA wants. I'm just saying that if Elon Musk was still in Washington, he would be having a fit about the difference between those numbers. That's crazy.
Except look at it this way. If they sell the existing FAA headquarters building, it probably pays for that renovation itself. I don't know. I think that building is so old. And they mentioned there are IT problems, and we know that the FAA's IT systems need to be desperately upgraded. By the way, I am seeing some changes on their website, which makes me think that a lot of things are happening in the background, data improvements, data streamlining. And I think that's the big thing that Sean Duffy wants to say. It's like, hey, DOT system, FAA systems, they shouldn't be separate and apart. They should really be integrated. And that's part of what this is as well.
Yeah. My favorite part about all of this is that talking about IT infrastructure is that to get the operator list, and Jessie knows this from her work with flyingprivate.org, is an Excel sheet. It is a Microsoft Excel sheet. Yeah. Like that's it. There's not like an API. Like that's pretty nuts. Like it, it is 2025, not 1995. The fact that it is still that. I want to point out, this is my favorite quote from the article. This is from one of the union leaders. Have you ever moved residences? You know how disruptive it is? It really takes a lot of time and attention out of everything else that you're doing. The same thing happens when we're moving workspaces, particularly when we're moving, the entire workspace. So the union people don't like it, but also I don't know if the union people have ever moved offices. Like, let's be honest. Like, I'm not 100% sure that you're speaking from a huge point of, I don't know, of involvement.
It's like the worst argument for anything too. Like, oh, it's going to be hard, so we shouldn't do it.
Yeah. I mean, I'm just going to say it. Classic union, right? Like,
oh yeah. Like if the bureaucracy of, Congress and government wasn't bad enough, now you also have the union not wanting to move. Like, it's just, I feel pain truly for people who run these organizations because it's impossible.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it's like you're in a public sector. Like the government is like, that means that between the people and the people working, like there's 5 layers, and the union is one of the 5 layers of like bureaucracy. Like that's pretty crazy. I'm pro workers and not super pro like unnecessary unions. That's just me.
True that. And also if the government needs to do something to be more efficient and spend less money, then it has to be done. It is what it is.
Yeah, very true. And in our last story of the week, we have organic expansion news. So we normally have the M&A gong, which is exciting, and we love M&A and fundraising and all of those kinds of things. But Millionaire is on the move, and they are trying to get active in the space. So they've had 2 announcements in the last couple of weeks. The first being an aircraft sales division being led by Tyler Bowron, who lives in Colorado, a good friend of mine. And they are really trying to make a push into the multi-vertical services. They're currently a large FBO provider. Fantastic FBO, by the way. Love Millionaire FBO. And they have also launched a jet card. So they're kind of moving into the jet card charter space and really trying to dominate the multi-vertical. Their FBOs give them a competitive advantage. They have a really good brand recognition, really good brand name. I mean, there's a lot of there's a lot of aircraft owners who love the Millionaire brand, and now they can buy and sell their aircraft. I think that's really interesting. Tyler Bowron he has a long track record of success. He's been kind of multiple places and done really well where he has been. And I think that this also points to another shift in kind of the aircraft brokerage model. There's been a lot of people movement over the last 24 to 36 months. And I think that this is just another one of the kind of big shakeup announcements that's been happening.
Yeah, no, I think this makes sense. I mean, the brokerage world is doing really well right now. For those who don't know, I'm moderating a panel at MBAA in a couple weeks, and just in some of our prep session, from what I'm hearing, sales is going to be on fire by the end of this year. I mean, buying and selling of aircraft is happening. Maybe we've seen a little less charter over the last few years, but fractional ownership, whole airplane ownership is big. So makes total sense. Millionaire has had a habit of getting into other kinds of businesses. They are a charter operator. For those who don't know, they actually, I believe it's 3 different charter certificates. If you go on flyingprivate.org, you can check that out. But they've always usually marketed it under a different name. And I think that's because there's probably a little bit of frustration, for people who are sending their customers into an FBO. They don't want the FBO going after that charter business or that brokerage business. So they're going to have to tread a little lightly here on the competitive side. But obviously, it makes a lot of sense. Your customers are there. Why wouldn't you serve them in every vertical you can?
Yeah, I think in the charter space, it's a lot more competitive for them than in the aircraft brokerage space, because aircraft brokers are not typically telling clients, hey, you need to go to Millionaire because we have a great fuel discount there. Mm-hmm. But in the charter space, it's a lot different. So I think it's a good move. There is a lot of transaction activity picking up. We are in the need to be understanding pipeline part of, the time of year. Mm-hmm. I think that it's kind of been a delayed start compared to what everybody was kind of expecting with bonus depreciation in July, setting us up for a really strong fourth quarter. But I will say that activity over the last 2 weeks has significantly increased. Everybody that I'm talking to is like, yeah, we're trading. And there's a lot of people that are thinking that, we're going to have a heavy back half fourth quarter, which is never great for service providers because, you hit capacity constraints pretty quickly, but things are moving in the transaction space. And I think that, fueled by bonus depreciation, we have rate cuts coming. We have, kind of optimism in the economy, generally speaking. Tariffs are kind of figured out sort of at this point, minus Pilatus. But yeah, so it's the transaction space is alive and well and doing good. I think that this is another signal that the transaction space has a lot of legs. I think the other thing that's challenging in the whole aircraft brokerage space versus the charter and MRO and those kinds of spaces is that the barrier to entry is incredibly low. And so if you train up somebody well enough, they're probably going to go start their own brokerage at some point. And so with Millionaire having kind of multi-vertical and really a strong brand presence and things like that, I think that it's interesting because, and also Tyler coming on, like you're bringing an industry veteran on, he obviously has some sort of a plan that makes sense for him, but he's not going and starting his own. He is kind of building it inside of the Millionaire brand. And to me, what that says is that like maybe we're approaching this standpoint of like, okay, it's time for some consolidation of sorts, right? I know there's a couple of brokerages that have tried to trade. There's a couple that have traded, but if you're going to go hang your hat up underneath a big brand that doesn't have a house, I wonder if we'll see that trend continue. Now, Millionaire does benefit from kind of being independent. They're not, private equity. They're not Roger. His mom, I think, started Mary Kay, if I remember right, or his mother-in-law did. There is a tie into Mary Kay.
There's some relationship.
I know that there is a relationship there. So sorry, everybody, that I don't know that off the top of my head. But their FBOs are fantastic. My personal favorite independent chain brand of FBOs, the one at White Plains, is insane. Like it is a great FBO.
I think that was an $80 million investment to renovate that space.
Yeah, crazy. On a ground lease. I mean, good for them.
But yeah, well,
so
what's interesting too, though? I mean, you talk about private equity, and I was reading an article recently. So Roger Woolsey is, the main like entrepreneur of the Millionaire brand, and he's said specifically he's not going to take on private equity. He wants to pass the business down to his daughters, which I think is really cool. He's definitely not just looking for an exit. So it makes sense to keep growing it and grow the empire for the kids.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, and that's really cool. I mean, it's a legacy build. His daughters all, I think, already work in the business, so they're kind of learning the business, understanding it, so that they're poised to take over. He's a huge warbirds guy too, so he's big in the warbirds community. He flies his own aircraft. everybody that I know who knows him says that he's a fantastic guy, a great leader. And so this is just more testament to organic growth and organic building in this space. And I mean, look, if you're putting $80 million into an FBO renovation, like, you're not afraid to make investments for the future. And I think that this is another signal for that. And having a jet card too, you argue, do they have enough scale now? Probably, that they can do something like that. And maybe you get added benefits of the FBO, or maybe, they can actually fuel their own discounts, literally, by discounting their fuel to their customers. Like, if you're flying millionaire to millionaire, I know that there's a couple of companies out there, like Thrive, for instance. If you fly from Teterboro or Las Vegas or OPF, where they have bases, you get a discount. So, you almost wonder if Millionaire now has this network of, if you're going from White Plains to Addison, we're going to give you, a couple $1,000 off, because they can eat that with the fuel flow, or, landing fees or whatever. Right. So I think it's interesting, and a different approach to what you're seeing other people who are organically building in this space. So it's interesting. I think I'm excited to see what happens, and best of luck to Tyler on this new endeavor.
Yeah. Well, and I think they do have the scale. So according to, flyingprivate.org, which gets its information from the FAA, which is now 60 days old because they were doing a data transfer and they didn't have an updated list of charter certificates. But anyway, according to the information I have, they have over 25 aircraft on their various certificates now. So they do have significant scale. I was actually surprised at the number. So all makes sense.
Yeah, very cool. Well, this has been another fantastic episode of the VIP Seat. We hope that you enjoyed it. We love to hear your feedback. So the number one way you can help this show is hit the share button on whatever podcast player you're listening on, or on YouTube. Copy the link and text it to 2 friends. That would mean so much to us as we're trying to grow this show, make a bigger impact. You come here and you can always expect your spicy takes, and sometimes some construction noise in the background from Preston. And so sorry for the listeners who have heard that in this episode, but go like us on YouTube. Do you like on YouTube? No, you follow on YouTube. Go follow us on YouTube, like us on LinkedIn, follow us on your favorite podcast player, Apple, Spotify, Amazon, wherever you listen to podcasts. There's a lot of places. Be sure to share with your friends, and then subscribe to the newsletter at thevipseat.com, where each week we give you a recap of the 5 stories. We give you links for reading deeper, and we hope that you enjoy it. We will see you next week. Jessie, welcome back to Florida, and we will see you next week.